told my tutor in high school, she goes, "What do you want to do? You're graduating." Well, I want to be an entrepreneur, an actor, and a stand-up comedian. She goes, "Ooh, I just want to work with their hands because they're not meant to do what they want to do." And I'm like, "Shit, this lady's known me for like 3 years." And I said, "Well, that's bold because my dad, he was a homeless street kid in New York, and then he became a millionaire. And my stepdad, I said, I think I could do it." And then I graduated high school, and the day after high school, I started my own little tool company like my dad did. Failed miserably. But then I went to City College for like 6 months, and I took 3 classes, and I wanted to learn business, psychology, and acting, theater. And within 6 months, I did stand-up comedy, and I brought tons of people there. And I was like, I should be a nightclub promoter, because I brought a lot of people here. And then with 6 months there, I became the #1 nightclub promoter in Los Angeles, and was able to meet a lot of people in Hollywood, which enabled me to get my first acting role playing Dirk Diggler in the Dirk Diggler Story, which is the short film for Boogie Nights, which I appear in as well.
Welcome to Minutes with Mango, Life in Motion. I'm your host, Johnny Mango. This is the place where we inquire about lifestyle, culture, and careers. Weekly, we meet with new guests that make a contribution of their insightful stories about their careers and how those careers impact their lifestyle and culture. Hello, everybody. This is Johnny Mango, and today we have really an exciting guest. He is an entrepreneur, an actor, a writer, director, producer, stand-up comedian, and he's actually a personal development expert. And he's also the founder of Abadak, a company that he started that does over $100 million. And I'd like to introduce you to Michael Stein. Hello, Michael.
Pleasure to meet you. And I'm sure I'm not the first to say this, but anybody with a name like Johnny Mango, that's a guy you want to hang out with and have a good time. So it's a pleasure to be with you.
Well, someday I'll tell you how I got that name. Anyway, well, let's get started. I'm really curious about your early days. I read that you had some health issues in childhood, and I'm really curious for my listeners to learn how you overcame that.
Yeah, so, I didn't know what ADHD was and all that, but I was just like a white knuckling it, basket case. I had dyslexia, focusing problem. I had to go to see a special eye doctor for that. I was born premature, tons of health issues. I was put in a special needs school at UCLA when I was a kid, when I was like 7 or 8, called Fernald School. And, I made sure that I was like, that's where my first accomplishment there was, like, I'll do anything to get out of this situation so I can go back to my regular school. So I was able to accomplish that. And I was like, ooh, okay, time plus effort. There's that. And I was able to make people laugh all the time. And I'm like, I'm good at that. But I wasn't good at anything else. And my story is that, like most American kids, I saw the movie Rocky. And I said, oh, here's a guy like me. They say he's not smart. And he's, kind of like a failure, but he keeps on fighting and getting back up. I'm like, I keep on doing that. People tell me that all the time. Only difference between this guy and myself is he's physically fit. So then I decided from that day, I'm going to do what Rocky does and work out every single day. And by the time I was 16, I became a physical fitness trainer. I was like, time plus effort again. And from there, I told my tutor in high school, she goes, "What do you want to do? You're graduating." Well, I want to be an entrepreneur, an actor, and a stand-up comedian. She goes, "Ooh, I just want to work with her hands because they're not meant to do what they want to do." And I'm like, "Shit, this lady's known me for like 3 years." And I said, "Well, that's bold because my dad, he was a homeless street kid in New York, and then he became a millionaire." And my stepdad, I said, I think I could do it. And then I graduated high school, and then the day after high school, I started my own little tool company like my dad did. Failed miserably. But then I went to City College for like 6 months, and I took 3 classes, and I wanted to learn business, psychology, and acting, theater. And within 6 months, I did stand-up comedy, and I brought tons of people there. And I was like, I should be a nightclub promoter because I brought a lot of people here. And then with 6 months there, I became the #1 nightclub promoter in Los Angeles, and was able to meet a lot of people in Hollywood, which enabled me to get my first acting role playing Dirk Diggler in the Dirk Diggler Story, which is the short film for Boogie Nights, which I appear in as well. And from there, I was able to make my own movies because I said, well, my friend Paul Thomas Anderson can do it. I can do it. And I made movies, short film, won a lot of awards, got bought by HBO, did really well, didn't make all the money back. And then I was broken in debt, and I was getting close to a movie deal with all these studios, but they didn't making. So I said, oh, look, I got to become an entrepreneur again because I want to make my own movie. So then I started chargeplus.com in 2000. 6 months later, I was able to make enough money to make Love Hollywood Style, which is a feature-length film with Faye Dunaway, Andy Dick, Julio, many other actors you've seen. And it did make all its money back. And I said, I got to take care of this business that has enabled me to do this. And since then, Charge Plus has made well over $100 million and continues to grow. And I just launched another company called Bulletor, which is a backpack company. And there's much more to my story, but that's kind of like my version of who I am and why I do a podcast called Long Shot Leaders, because I've had many successes and failures. And that's why I'm talking to you and your fun, good audience here today.
Well, cool. How about, with your ADHD and the stuff you described when you were young? Did it carry forth into your adulthood? Do you still have to deal with anything from that? Or is that, because I have people, I've heard pros and cons about that.
I never knew I had anything. I thought, growing up in LA was a gift because everybody's like, ooh, he's eccentric. He's different. He's wild. I was like, yeah, I'm wild. I'm different. I'm a comedian. And then I never knew I had it. I thought it was just special. And then I knew I was putting that special needs. I'm like, well, that was just me being lazy or something. So then I worked with it. I brought in somebody to be higher up at my company. And he was a Mensa guy, 1% of 1% Mensa. And he's worked with he was protege to a president or a president-elect or a candidate. And he was a really accomplished guy. And after working with me for several months, he's like, listen, I gotta tell you, my wife has ADHD. She's been diagnosed. And you're like classic ADHD. And I'm like, screw you. I was like, you're just pissed off. And he's like, I'm just telling you. And he goes, he sent me all this information. And I went online with my own basis. And I literally check every single box. Like crazy.
Really?
Whatever they say, because I don't believe, because I've been involved in personal development for years, not knowing. So I take it with a grain of salt. But whatever they say that is, I definitely fit the criteria, every single thing. Uh-huh. And I was like, okay. This is just another thing for me to tackle. So now I'm instead of the typical traits, I'll just try to be cognizant of the bad and then use the good, because there's a lot of benefits to having ADHD. Like this guy, Albert Einstein up here, he had ADHD, they say, because they've examined him afterwards, whatever this diagnosis is. And I take it with a grain of salt, but yeah, that's kind of like, my brain is, they say my daughter's been diagnosed with it, my youngest. Special. This is great. Congratulations. You're on the way to success.
I wonder if a lot of entrepreneurs actually have ADHD. I've worked in my career, I've worked with a lot of different entrepreneurs, and I really wonder. I mean, they're kind of, sometimes they're like, there's a squirrel, but they can turn it into money. They can focus, but they can go after other stuff too and make it all kind of blend together and be profitable and not be threatened so much by failure either.
Yeah, because you're weak on failure. I mean, I've had so much failure and so many embarrassing. I've been booed off stage as a comedian. I've been booed off stage as a nightclub promoter traveling around the country showing a documentary I did. I've had so many mistakes and impulsive issues growing up as a kid. I wasn't planning. I also didn't tell you, I grew up with, I had to sleep, I'm the youngest, so I had to sleep in the same room with my grandmother off and on until I was 9 years old. And she would tell me how she escaped the Russian concentration camps. That was my bedtime story. You're not just having ADHD and having your dad, saying, hey, your dad was a New York homeless street kid. You're lucky to be where you're at. I think all that helps being an entrepreneur, all those things, especially, yes. I think ADHD or whatever that, that personality type is.
Yeah. So, I grew up in LA myself, so I'm a little crazy. So
yeah, good.
I left along.
Mango, you got to grow up in LA.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So tell me about, are you still doing acting and stand-up, or are you just working your business now?
So I just came out with Bulletor.com, but before I started, which is my backpack company, I still do Charge Plus. But before I started that, I said, I got to do some stand-up because the entrepreneurial thing comes first for me. So I said, I know I'm going to have to do something, just to get while I'm waiting to watch this thing. So I did like, like a stint of like a couple months of stand up to get it out of my system again. Something I've done off and on since I'm 19, since that first time I told you about. And I did that last year. And now we've launched Bold Tour. So it's all steam ahead to try and build Bold Tour into the biggest brand it can be and to grow Tarps Plus. I've written 8 screenplays. The last one I wrote, I might make that in a year or two. Business first. I've learned that along the way. Take care of business, and then
Yeah. So let's talk about your business for a few minutes. What kind of business do you have? What do you do?
the tarpsplus.com is when I started to make that film, and we sell basically all kinds of tarps, like you go in the store, Home Depot and see tarps. We sell every single poly tarps, canvas tarps, mesh tarps, vinyl tarps, tarps for shade, tarps for all kinds of protection, all kinds of uses.
So your product's probably covering my stack of wood out in my backyard.
Absolutely. We, every time I see blue houses, for hurricane, it's most likely us. We're very, saturated into the world of that because we're on our 25th year.
How'd you find yourself into that? How'd you get into that business?
So the romantic story is my dad had a tool business in the late 60s, and then he left it to sell calculators in the early 70s. And he became known as the calculator kid, selling so many calculators, but then he had a crazy lifestyle. He never finished 8th grade. So then he burnt the millions that he made. And then he eventually became homeless again, but then he navigated out of that. But when he went back to the tool business. And his partner from the 60s, when he first started tool business, his partner started a tool business afterwards in 1975 called Harbor Freight. Alan Smith, my dad's old business partner, Alan Smitty. And so I grew up around the tool business, and the first business I did when I graduated high school, which I failed miserably, which was a tool business, selling abrasive wheels and drill bits. But when the internet came around, I said, I want to do something that's niche-y. And, my dad's saying, sell tools, sell the abrasive wheels and the drill bits again. You were a young kid when you started that. I was like, I got to do something else. So I saw tarps, and I was like, Harbor Freight, we had tons of tools and stuff. And I met Smitty, and I was just this whole journey of these tool guys. And I said, this is what's interesting, and this is what's boring. And I think tarps can be used for camping. They can be used, covering all things, so many different things. People invent things out of them. I said, let me just sell tarps. So I started selling tarps in my Yahoo store, and I blew up from there. And then I donate tarps to the homeless, which I used to donate canned food to the homeless when I was a nightclub promoter. You get in for for Thanksgiving. You go to a turkey soup with my big LA party. If you come with a canned food, you get in for half price. So then I was like, donate tarps on Thanksgiving to the homeless because they need it. So, this is something where I can have some fun, do a little good, and then my dad was known as the calculator kid, and then eventually I became the number one seller for tarps for hurricanes, and I became known as Hurricane Mike. So I was like, all right, I'm not the calculator kid, but I'm that. I can live with that. That's pretty fun. This is kind of like my goal, This is what I set out to do. Become an entrepreneur, among the other things. So I was like, okay, that's kind of like my journey and why I sold tarps and kind of like, what I've done with it.
Wow. So you're an active dude. You got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah. It's, I think it's the ADHD. You're impulsive. You need constant kinetic energy. And I think it helps. I think it's I work out every single day because there's just tons of energy. And I think when you're younger, and for the young folks listening out there that have maybe you think the ADHD, you want to do so much, you get you could spin out of control. So I try to do as much as I can because it fulfills that insatiable urge, like a dog chewing on an object. But I try to do it with a strategy because I can get sidetracked, can get impulsive. So yeah, I try to do as much as I can with a strategy.
Yeah. I have a friend in the radio business that I'm convinced he's got ADHD. He's like bouncing all over. He's got a new program going all the time. He's got this going on. He calls me up. Let's go do this. Let's go do that. My wife says, every time he calls you, it's going to cost you $10,000. So let's talk about your 10-point recipe for setting up success. What is that?
Yeah, so it starts with understanding. The first thing is understanding scope. of the situation. Before anybody when you want to be an entrepreneur or anything you want to do, you want to start a podcast, you want to start a club in school, understand the scope of something. And the way to do that is ask yourself the who, what, where, why, when, and how, and then do what D.S. Demings taught Toyota after World War II. Ask yourself it 5 times. So Toyota has something called the 5 whys. Why is this? Why is that? Why is this? Why is that? Why is that? What happens with this process, if you understand the scope of a situation, you start to get very clear on where the direction you want to go. Because without scope, you're kind of lost. You're like, well, I wanted that, but I don't know. So you fully vet this out. This doesn't have to be tedious, but you fully vet it out, understand the scope. And then when you understand where you want to go and you fully vet it out, you want to take immediate action. It doesn't have to be like a monumental thing. Let's say it could be even like a thing goal. Let's say I want to buy a Mercedes. Well, go out and buy a brochure. Or go get a free brochure from that. Do something now. Make a phone call. Do something to get the ball rolling. Set a date. Set a date for when you will have this thing accomplished by, and make it a win. Make it think it's going to take you a year to write that book? Give yourself a year and a half and mark down the date, and then backdate. And what do I need to do to get to that date? And take immediate action. So work on that, mold that, and work every day, And then once you're doing that process, constant, never-ending improvement. It's called CANI, right? The acronym. The constant, never-ending improvement towards that goal. All right? And then from there, gauge. So, well, I'm doing this, is not working. That doesn't work, try something else. If that doesn't work, try something else. And constantly engaging it and moving forward like a plane is off course, constantly putting it on course. Okay? And then, along this way, parallel to that, I would definitely invest in personal development. Understand you and understand other people. Why do you do what you do? Why do other people do what they do? So really, for me, I did everything Tony Robbins has ever done. So I really, 6 Human Needs Psychology, which is like the origin of it is Maslow's hierarchy of consciousness, which is basically human beings do things for 6 reasons, which is to attain certainty, uncertainty, variety, significance, love, contribution, and growth. So understand that there's negative vehicles to that and positive vehicles to that, and why you do what you do. Examine those things. Understand who you are with that mind. Understanding 6 Human Needs Psychology, and then also understanding why people that you're dealing with, what are driving their decisions pertaining to that. That'll help you navigate yourself, and that'll help you operate yourself better. It also helps you once you get, you won't lose as much time trying to figure other people out, because you really have a good understanding. It's like, it took me days to get over what that guy did to me, because I've had people try to screw me over, steal businesses and all that. But then you really think about it and you're like, this is just, he just chose the vehicle. It helps you kind of navigate faster and more efficient, if you understand how people think. And so I'd say study personal development along the way. And as you're trying to attain your goal, realize to perfect the triad of emotions, which is basically the recipe of how we operate and how much we can do in one day. It's predicated on our emotions. So the physiology, focus, and the internal and external world to you is just a recipe of how probable your results are going to be. Because if you, have the recipe of failure and you're telling yourself you're focusing on negativity, you are, or you're not just negativity, but you're focusing on, things of all your failures. Because it's okay to see things negative. It's okay to look at your failures and then say, well, how can I then go into what's the recipe for my success? And that is, how do I talk to myself? How do I talk to others about what I'm dealing with? What am I focusing on internally right now? What am I visualizing? And what's my body language? And what's my facial language? And basically, you will operate off of 9s and 10s if you learn how to perfect this, as opposed to operating off of 1s and 2s and saying, well, my goal is taking forever because you don't have gas in the tank, because your emotions and are not pushing you forward. We're not robots. We're human beings. So that's really important.
I one of the things that I picked up on, and I see this with a lot of people, and I've seen it in business over the years, is that people don't start something until they feel it's perfect. And it never happens.
Right.
And I think that was one of your points back on number 5 or so, that you got to just do it and then fix it as you go.
Right. And your emotions will drive you for that too. Failed at something, don't tell yourself, so why does this keep on happening? Tell yourself, What's interesting about this? What can I learn from this? Empowering questions. Use empowering questions. What's funny about this? How can I use this? Those are questions that are going to lead you to empowering answers. They're going to help you move forward with pay dirt.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate it. Those are good points. And so let's talk about your podcast, Long Shot Leaders.
Yes. I do it for self-evident reasons. I don't consider myself a long shot with all the things I told you find good people about. I've been doing that for about a little over 3 years. And I got the Bolator podcast also, which tells outdoor adventure stories for the Bolator brand that we told you about, my backpack company. We actually just started one for even Charge Plus after all these years. It's launching at the end of the month. We're doing the DIY Not podcast. They're sponsored by Charge Plus. Just 15 minutes of like somebody does something. They give us like a rapid fire of like, this is how I started it. This is how I do it. If you want to do it too, this is what I did. That's it. You're out. 15 minutes later.
Great. That's a great idea. That's a really good idea.
Thank you.
Yeah. You must have had those in one of your moments, one of your ADHD moments.
Yeah. I was like, do this. Let's have those guys up there. And then I do also the Stein Time Show, which is basically comedian spectrum. We do that stuff.
Wow. So what's your top advice to an entrepreneur if somebody is thinking about they're either thinking about a business or maybe they have a small business and they're trying to figure out what to do. What's your top recommendation?
Start to write everything down and just kind of like start to look at online of like, what's the world look like? What am I interested in? Does this work? Does that work? No. Yes. No. Go through some things. What am I going to do? How am I going to do it? What's it, kind of like ask yourself a lot of questions. Take time for discovery, basically. Get scope of the situation. And then once you start to realize, is there opportunity there or is this just passion? Michael talks about passion versus opportunity. So really, you want to do passion, but then you got to see, is there the opportunity there? Can I truly monetize this? Because that's the indicator of your being successful.
Yeah, I have two sons that are both creatives. One's a writer, one's a musician, and I'm always talking to them about monetization. And creatives are like, well, what's that?
Sure. Isn't that boat? I know.
What's that? And, how about, let's talk about human needs psychology for a minute in personal development, because you've addressed that before.
So, I'll tell you my journey in personal development. When I was dating this girl when I was like in 21, 22, and it was totally in love with her. We broke up. And she's so sweet. Her dad was friends with Tony Robbins. She calls me up 6 months later. Says, I see you're struggling with this, There's a time for her to move on and all that. And we were so young. And she's very mature. She's like, you should get Tony Robbins tapes, his 30-day program. So that the guy with the big teeth and, whatever on that infomercial, I'm like, I'll do anything he asks. I was already kind of like into personal development and into improving myself. But, fitness and everything else. So I got it. And I just went to town on it. And first 6 months, I did one of the biggest events in LA club history, which is I directed this documentary on the history of LA clubs, and I did a 4,000 person event for it. And that was all because of the Tony Robbins thing that I followed every single step. And then afterwards, you falter a little bit. And that's what happens in personal development. It's like, well, I tried that. It didn't work. It's like, no, you had successes and then you fell back and then, because my business, I tried to be an actor, so I left my nightclub business and I was just like, kind of, not, sometimes you operate off 9 and 10, sometimes you operate off, 3s and 4s. So then eventually, I, listened to everything he ever did and it helped me get success. But then when I started my business and I made some money, I called up Tony Robbins' place, and this all has to do with success, human needs psychology. And I said, look, I know this stuff. Sometimes he goes, well, tell me what you do and why you want to do more. So I want to get a coach. I said, well, I just want, sometimes things don't happen my way. And he goes, well, what seminars have you been to? I said, I haven't been to any, but I've been doing this for like 15 years. And he goes, you got to go to a seminar, man. He's like, there's a difference between intellectual knowledge and physical knowledge. And intellectual knowledge is what I can just explain to you, find good people here today about 16 Minute Psychology and other things. You can conceptualize it, but you're not going to know how it applies to you. And you're not going to break it down. You're not going to take a sustained amount of time to really apply it and then go, oh, this is how it works. And I've scrutinized it and I've actually applied it, because there's a way to apply this stuff and then also say, and see how it can work better for you. So long story short, 6 Human Needs Psychology was a big part of what Tony Robbins teaches. And like I said, it comes from Maslow, his hierarchy of consciousness, which is the guy in the 60s that, kind of had this theory that people are motivated by their needs.
Yeah.
And the 6 Human Needs it's kind of like I think about it all the time because it really helps you move better in business and success and whatever you're trying, relationships, everything you're trying to navigate through. It's like, why did I do that? Why did I humble brag about that? Well, I was trying to seek significance. Why did I, why am I choosing this decision? Just realize that, it's either I'm doing it for security, for variety, for significance, for growth, contribution, or love. And that's some people do those things. They find vehicles to get those things in a negative way or a positive way. Gang members can get their 6 human needs, but that's a negative vehicle because it's not going to be long sustaining. Somebody like Gandhi or Mother Teresa can get those ways. And that's like helping for the greater good. It's the triad of good decisions also. That's another thing in personal development where what is a triad of good decision? Is it good for me? Is it good for you? Is it good for the greater good? Granted, presidents and leaders of countries have difficulty going to war and that breach, but those are the tough ones. But this almost perfect art form, you could say, look for yourself. Let that be the guiding light of your making decisions and work that in tandem with 6 Human Needs Psychology.
Yeah, that's really kind of explains the diversity and passion. In other words, what I'm passionate about may not be what you're passionate about, but it's really important to me, and I don't understand why it's not important to you. Those conflicts in life, I'm sure you've run into them somewhere along the way.
Different vehicles.
Yeah. That's that human psychology, the human needs. I have a need, and I need to, and once you get a need satisfied, it's not a need anymore.
But that vehicle might be it's like chewing gum. That was the vehicle that I needed to feel significant. Now I have a different vehicle for significance because I'm kind of over that, where it doesn't taste good anymore. It doesn't motivate.
I think that comes as we walk through life and get older and have different experiences along the way. Those needs shift and they change. And what was important to drink 2 6-packs of beer now is turned into I'll have a glass of wine after dinner.
Right. Yeah. Caviar doesn't taste good as a kid, but for some reason it tastes better when you get older. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, Michael, I really appreciate you taking the time today to chat with us and your Long Shot Leaders podcast. Where can people find that?
They can just go to michaelsteinmedia.com and they'll find out more about me. michaelsteinmedia.com will show all of our podcasts and many other wonderful things.
Okay, michaelsteinmedia.com. Easy to do. Stein. Michael Stein. All right. Okay. Well, thanks for joining us today, Michael. I appreciate you taking the time. And Johnny Mango says goodbye. Take care.
Very nice.
You have been listening to Minutes with Mango, Life in Motion. Subscribe to hear a new and unique guest each week as they comment on their life's journey and share experiences with lifestyle, culture, and career. You can always find us at minuteswithmango.com.